Welcome to Mystery Commander Theater 100. This is Bad Kitty, and as always, I'm joined today with Reptile.
Yo, what's up? How's it going? So I'm showcasing the deck we just did in our most recent deck tech video, Anowon, and I'm just going in with rogues, looking to apply some pressure, gain some value off of their abilities, and eventually win with Death's Oracle and Consultation.
Yeah, to the right of Reptile is Archjelly, and he'll be bringing in Aesi, the Tyrant of Gyre Strait, which is going to be a landfall deck that's going to try and build a value engine to then draw his deck and basically just get as much value on the board as possible.
Mm-hmm. Resting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is playing the Dragon. The Dragon really is. I mean, in a lot of games you're really not going to be casting him, but his Eminence ability is helps you get those high mana curved dragons out and really start applying pressure just from those. So it's a really thematic deck, really cool. I enjoyed.
Absolutely. And our third new player is our official doctor in the house. Congratulations to Dr. Vuskiet for getting his doctorate this year. And he will be playing Kess, Dissident Mage. This is a semi-storm, semi-looting combo deck that's looking to resolve the Thassa's Oracle and win off of that effect. So this is a very combo-y, fast-paced deck.
Yeah, it's in Grixis, so you have a lot of interaction, a lot of burst. The main thing is it's just pretty hard to recover if you're wiped out entirely. But I going first. I actually had a really good hand. I missed my land drops, but I had a turn 1 Horde Robber, which allowed me to ramp artificially into my Signet. So I'm looking pretty good.
Oh yeah, turn 1 looked excellent right there.
So now Archjelly, his main theme is just going to be lands, so we're going to expect to see that and really not too much pressure out of him. What do you think resting is going to do for his, how is he going to curve out into the early game? Because most of those dragons are high mana cost, and a lot of the time you're just looking at...
Well, thankfully, because of his commander, those high mana costs aren't going to be really that much of an issue because of his eminence, which means that whenever it's either on the battlefield or in the command zone, your dragon's spells are reduced by 1. So, it's going to make his 4 costs 3 costs, 2 costs 1 cost. It's going to reduce his amount of, having to, invest in such large creatures. So I think in the early game, he's looking to get off spells like 3 visits to go and fetch out the specific, tri-lands that are forests or shocklands, and just really get his ramp up so that he can start playing these larger creatures and creating a big beneficial board.
That's some pretty good insight on it. Right now we got Kess out, and a lot of the commanders are starting to come out relatively early. Usually these 3-4 mana commanders you don't see played too often, but there's the first creature from Archjelly, the Yavimaya Elder. So again, more defensive, reactive, looking to accrue value and eventually burst on the game. But we have a Skittles on the board. So
oh yeah, this is such one of the scarier dragons to let resolve and not have removal for, because Infect is still just 10 damage.
Oh, especially early on in the game.
Oh yeah,
there are less creatures.
Oh yeah, we're talking turn 4 or 5, and you're out of the game because of a 4/4 flyer. Mm-hmm. So it's very threatening to hit the board and not see a lot of removal.
And now we have Dr. Vuskiet going in for a frantic search. Really just a bomb card in Kess, because she utilizes the graveyard very well. And he's going to go for a Ristic Study, just again trying to queue more value. So looks like really everyone outside of resting is looking to just kind of play back and generate mana, generate card advantage.
Oh yeah.
But here I'm trying to pressure life totals, looking to see what I can get. I don't believe I hit any creatures off of Dr. Vuskiet, which is, makes sense given
right.
It's a Grixis control spellslinger list.
Oh yeah, but for sure. Very few creatures in that list.
And Archjelly, majority lands, but a lot of landfall abilities. So it's pretty... He's pretty passive in general, so you really don't have to worry about him until he gets to the late game. It's one of those decks where you leave it alone, and then once you leave it alone, there's like a coma out on the board or something.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It's one of those decks that as soon as it gets ahead, it stays ahead, and it's really depending on like resolving board wipes that will set this deck back. But it's when you're playing a landfall deck and your deck is mostly lands and you're getting so many different ways of like playing multiple lands, it's really easy to reset your board. It's, I mean, you know, there's the whole point of the deck is to like get a draw engine to be able to redraw those creatures so that even if there is a board wipe, you could just set up the next turn.
Agreed. And here I decided we skimmed over it a little bit, but the Graph Digger's Cage, really good hit against Dr. Vuski, and you never really know what creatures are just going to start going in or being casted from the library, especially with the dragons that search out a lot. So, but a Kindred Discovery, another really good hit. This allows those dragons to actually turn into value. So,
oh yeah, for sure. Every time he attacks, every time he casts one, he's going to be drawing off of that, which is going to be feeding his, feeding his play line and making those just dragons worth more.
And this is one of the, I would say this is not exactly CEDH. There's a lot of CEDH cards, but the strategies generally are either too slow or too inefficient outside of Kess, I believe, in this pod. So what's a contrast? Because we've had other CEDH games that we've played before, but what's a contrast did you see from this one as opposed to the other ones we've played?
Things tend to stick on the board much longer than like threatening things. Like it's been 3 turns with Skittles on the board, and there's been no attempts to like remove it.
I believe it's been 2 because there's only 4 infect on someone at the moment.
Okay, so 2 turns, but still 2 turns around the table it's enough. You know, it's to put that kind of pressure on one of the players in the game and nobody else trying. Well, then again, if it's going at one person, the 2 other people might be, inclined to not deal with it until it's coming their way.
That's fair. It's almost like doing the work for you.
Right, yeah. It's doing a lot of work on the table right now, so maybe letting it stick around wasn't the worst idea.
Right now, I'm missing my land drops. In this hand, I saw there was 1 land and I thought I could draw, or I had 2, and then I pitched 1 to the Mox Diamond, hoping I would get another one, but having a lot of fast mana at the moment is really aiding me, just because all I need to do is just land my creatures. And here I attempt to go for the combo and for the win. Fortunately, cannot pay for Ristic Study, and he is going to be able to draw. So with my combo out on the board, a Forbid comes out. I was just talking about Jacob or Archjelly, being really defensive, and here's one of those instances we were able to react and just kind of play the police for a bit.
Oh yeah, for sure. His deck really sits back and tries to stop the big combos and then allow him to, gain access. So that was perfect timing on his behalf. And he pays for the Ristic, so there's no more draws. And so now there's this big counterspell war going on, trying to stop this Thassa Oracle combo. And unfortunately, once Thassa hits the table and there's no more, Tainted Pack or anything like that, you have to find a way to get Thassa's back in the hand. Or else it's like, the combo's gone.
Yeah, that's definitely the main win line in my deck. So having that interacted with by multiple players does set you back, but on the same note, this is part of the reason why you have Anowon as a commander, and the rogues are evasive and they're able to start doing damage. So unfortunately, I'm the target for a lot of the damage being thrown at me. So I have to play a lot more reactively or a lot more defensively instead of trying to pressure alongside, like an Air Dragon deck that's pressuring other people's life totals. But in this case, I kind of have to vouch for myself because my combo's out of the picture. So
right. You really have to find some solutions now. Also, one thing to note that's like you kind of became the arch enemy not only because you went for the win there, but like your Graph Digger's Cage is keeping an entire player out of the game right now. Vuski's deck is Dr. Vuski's deck. His entire goal is to be able to play stuff from his graveyard. So you're basically just turned his commander into, I believe, a 3/4 flyer. I'm not quite sure what its power toughness is.
Yeah,
But,
I'm not quite sure on the.
It just
the
turned it
spell.
into a creature. Totally turns off its effects and its ability to, go crazy with the looting effects.
And noticeably, the Ugin, even though he's not technically, a dragon by his creature type, pretty thematic in the deck, and it wipes out everything except for the rocks, and one of those happens to be Grafdigger's Cage. So
Yep.
unfortunately, Dr. Vuski isn't going to get out of that one, even though all our boards got wiped. But
Yep, that one card's really keeping him out of the game. That Ugin was a huge play. It really set everybody right back. It turned off the Ristic. It allows the dragons to stay on the board and keep pressuring. It just does a whole lot.
yes, and notably, I'm at 8 Infect at the moment, and I know that it's coming at me just to kill me, because it would take 3 more swings as opposed to 1 to take out a single player. So I really have to look and see what I'm gonna do to survive. So getting rid of this Slitherix is my main priority. Even though there's an Ugin on the battlefield, it's kind of funny to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's also one thing to note here that we kind of missed to explain is that when Ugin exiled everything, it exiled your win condition. Now you actually can't win with the Thassa's combo. So what's your plan once you realize that?
So typically, one way that you're able to recover this is through the use of Praetor's Grasp in the deck.
Yeah.
But just given the nature, I think I only have one target for Praetor's Grasp, and that would be Dr. Vuski. So I would have to take his, exile it, but the other linchpin in this deck are the rogues and their ability to be evasive and put pressure. But with Ugin able to ping everything down, the rogues just really, or the dragons, I should say, that really outpace the rogues in terms of damage and just their overall value that they generate. So right now, I need to look at a way to answer them, and then eventually get my game plan and value going through things like Opposition Agent or Notion Thief. But survival is my main priority right now, and I have to mean betrayal to dig through time for an answer. So
Fair enough.
Looking through, hoping I find something, and I believe I do. I get a Lotus Petal and a Chain of Vapor with no mana left, so I'm able to bounce the Slitherix. And he's able to continue the chain, but I doubt he does, so he's not going to give up one of his lands.
Right.
Goes back, and I am still in the worst position at the table, but alive at least. At least I think. I'm not sure what he could do. He'll give not haste.
Right. It's very hard to be ahead in the game and to get such a setback because you continue to be arch enemy. I've found playing the game that if you have a very explosive opening and then you threaten win, it doesn't really matter what happens to you after your win is thwarted. You kind of stay at that top spot until you're gone. And sometimes it's actually a lot of waste of resources. It's just people get really short-sighted, and they don't see any possible things they could need for any other player because they still see you as the biggest threat.
Agreed. And also, as you learn new things every day, as I was reading Slitherix, he has an ability to give himself haste, but he does not have the mana to do it with the mana that he has right now, so I'm very fortunate that happens.
Big target here, Reality Shift exiles Slitherix, so now there's nothing that can there's no resurrection or any ways to get it back from the graveyard, so that was a good hit, a good Reality Shift to give him a manifested card and get Slitherix out of the game.
Agreed, because once that took me out, it was definitely with Ugin and his ability to just ping threats down, especially that none of these decks really have too many flyers or reach creatures. Eventually that's going to be a problem for not just me but everyone else at the table. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Dr. Vuski just wants to play really reactive. Just I think puts a land and passes. I try to get Anowon back on the board maybe as a blocker for Aesi if I get too low from these dragons, but thankfully that 8 Infect isn't really going off. And we haven't really talked too much about Arcjelly. He was able to place his Aesi now, so we really get to see how this value engine is going to start to accrue, its value.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Aesi, like we've said thus far in the video, is very reactive until you start building your value engine. And Aesi, the commander itself, is a huge part of that value engine. Now he has the ability to not only play 2 lands a turn, but he's drawing a card for each land from Aesi, and now he's drawing a card per land from Horn of Greed. And this is where he's going to start really digging deep into his deck and getting more landfall triggers.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like Simic ad nauseum in a way.
Oh yeah. You just dig for lands and play them and cast more and draw more, and you get really deep into the deck and just build these crazy board states with the amount of mana you're allowed to play with.
So I know you've been in positions similar to what this pod looks like right now, where the left half of the pod is in a pretty bad spot, while the right hand in the pod are the 2 decks that are really vying to keep up tempo and keep up the overall card advantage on each other. So what if you were in my position or in Dr. Vusi's position and you see that your board state is a lot worse than the other players in the pod, what do you do to try to get back into the game? Like, what do you...
It's really hard. When you're put into this position where half the table is doing great and the other half is really struggling, you kind of leave the other half, in this position, if I were you, I'd leave Dr. Vuski absolutely alone. If he wanted to bounce my board, let him bounce the board, because it's doing more damage to the other 2 compared to what it's going to be doing to me, like the Cyclonic Rift that he's playing here.
Oh, absolutely. I was happy to see that, and I was devastated to see that counter.
Yeah, and it's we're at a point in the game where players are definitely playing way more reactive. So, they're defending their boards because they're finally ahead. Mm-hmm. One thing that's important to talk about when you're sitting down at a pod is the power level. And things that can really determine power levels are like infinite combos or insta wins like Thassa's Oracle. And I know for a fact that 2 out of the 4 decks sitting at the table don't have any insta wins. And that would be Aesi and the Ur Dragon. They have a lot of their value engines and they have a lot of synergy, but they don't have any singular card that's like you win the game. So, you talk about power levels and things like that, and this pod sees gameplay from power levels anywhere from Aesi could be considered a 5 all the way up to where Dr. Vusi's deck could be considered an 8 or 9 because of the way it's able to dig through itself and win very early on with the right hands.
And Dr. Vuski, showing the diversity in his deck, gets a board wipe, able to actually hit the Planeswalker too, which is really important because Ugin was at 6, and trying to build any kind of board state with an Ugin at 6 and where it could just minus is extremely difficult. But Jelly, I would say the least affected by the board wipes traditionally, outside of something like Armageddon, just because a lot of his things are lands. A lot of his strategy hinges on the lands, so he's able to do this. But now he has a Seedborn Muse, which has haste, which is fine, but most importantly hexproof. And now he doesn't have anything to really dump them in, or no, he does. He can actually play flash creatures here. Just again showing the diversity in his what he chooses to pick.
Talking to him when we were going over him building this deck, his favorite proponent of this deck was when he was ahead enough with mana, being able to give his spells flash on his opponent's turn, so that he could, stay untapped during Resting's turn and Dr. Vuski's turn and your turn, but at the end of your turn he could tap all of his mana and then play things at flash speed. So he has 2 different lands that does it, and I believe he has an enchantment that allows him to play spells at instant speed as well. So he really likes to synergize that and basically play on everybody's turns. So it's not just big creatures. He's allowing himself to get a lot of value off of every turn.
One important note is we do know that Archjelly does have that buyback counter spell that he used to interact with my Thassa's Oracle consultation.
Right.
So not only does he have the option of, flash something in, but if you try to do anything in response, build your own board, he's able to counter it, react, and then still get his game plan going. The Seedworm Muse is really critical to him being able to accrue this board state while also not having haste, because a lot of his strategy is based on beatdowns. So essentially cheating out the summoning sickness aspect of his deck.
Right, and it's really important. Here he just played one of his like bigger beatdown creatures, which is Molimo. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control, which in a landfall deck is fabulous because you're gonna have guaranteed 10 lands this late in the game. So that's a 10/10 creature that just gets bigger the more lands you play. And with Aesi back on the field, you're getting 2 lands a turn, and you're getting draws off of each land, double draws. So you're hitting more lands to guarantee that the next turn you're getting more draws, and just really pumping that creature to like get it to where it needs to go.
So Dr. Dvorsky opting to play his commander Kess, I believe he just kind of he sees that I'm primed to die, and that means that Grafdigger's Cage is going to be gone. So getting Kess out, I agree. I have the Literal Core, mostly just trying to fish for something else that I can do to, dig my way out of this. But I'm pretty slim at the moment, unless I get my own Cyclonic Rift. I think that would probably be the best thing. But again, Arc Jelly does have the counterspell in hand, so right now I believe I just go for a Necropotence, seeing if I can get anything. Yeah. Going down to 1 life because I'm dying to, I think if the board or Arch Jelly can just swing the trample at me. I have no response, no blockers, so.
Right.
Looking to see, praying that I can get something, and I believe he's just going to play reactive. Getting Mystic Sanctuary, so. Oh, he didn't buy it back. Okay, I misremembered. He used Mystic Sanctuary to retrieve it, and then he's able to buy it back now that Seedborn is, he's drawing cards and he has this value engine here, but Pact of Negation goes out. At this point, I know I'm at 1 life, so I'm just looking to see. I still want to play to win, even though I know I cannot win, but I want to utilize at least some of the cards in my hands.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you stop trying to interact with the table, you might as well just scoop from the game. Like, if you hold on to spells just because you don't think it's going to do anything for the game, then, like, if you're there that bad of a position, probably end it. But also, like, it's okay to continue to try and play the game. Like, people have come back from really weird and, like, low situations in a game and, like, at least took second because everybody stopped paying attention to them. So, like, you have to still cast those spells and, like, make those, packed payments and things like that, just because, like, you have a chance. There's always a chance.
Agreed, yeah. Brazen Bar counterspell, and I wasn't able to bounce the thing that was coming at me, so in my own kind of, I don't know, I went out on my own, I tapped my Mana Confluence and killed myself before damage applied. So now that I'm out of the game, ironically, the deck that was supposed to showcase just got dumpstered on at the moment. But we do actually have a pretty good, I don't know, this is more akin to those lower power level games where it's just a huge board. It's really hard to keep track of everything.
Oh, yeah.
But it's fun, because it really engages you, and you have to be, like, really aware of everything that's going on, triggers.
Right, yeah. This is the kind of Magic that really turns, like, once you get this late game, it turns into a slugfest. There's going to be large hit after large hit, but also, unfortunately, in this level of Commander, you're going to see a lot of board wipes. And you're going to see a lot of resets, and you're going to see, that's why this power level takes, the games take a long time to play, because there's a lot of people threatening board states that have to be answered, and they have to be answered en masse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like instead of just really crucial compact creatures, you kind of have a bunch of, like dirtily creatures, usually tokens, but in numbers, a lot of times it can be hard to answer with removal that's used in other formats that really aren't just used to this. So.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm. And
for Mystical Tutor, looking to just, what do you think you would get here if you were in Kess? What would you want to get with Mystical Tutor?
Honestly, I would be looking for something to either try and reshuffle my graveyard, or I'm looking for maybe even the combo, because I know he hasn't attempted the combo yet. But I don't know exactly. Like he's eyeing a Blasphemous Act right now, which is probably the best card to do what he needs it to do. But also, like, it doesn't really put him ahead on anything. It just reestablishes that, like, it just resets the board. And it doesn't, like, the life total still stayed the same. He's still the lowest life total. He's used a lot of his resources now in the game to try and, like, stop people from winning or, like, remove big threats. So he's kind of fishing for something that's just going to give him enough value to try and get back into this game. And I think he's really eyeing that Blasphemous Act, which Blasphemous Act is, I believe, 8 and 1 red mana.
I'm not sure. I just know it's usually cast for 1 red.
It costs 1 less generic mana per creature that is on the battlefield, and it deals 13 damage to each creature, which is usually enough to wipe out every creature that's on the board.
But it's opting for Decree of Pain, Forbid, coming in clutch, and I think even at this point, like you said before, Dr. Vuski has answered and addressed the creatures. I think one of the main things that's really holding him back from this point is the Zendikar Resurgent and the King's Rediscovery, because they're both enchantments that allow them to just essentially just turn all their big pieces into cantrips. So even if it does get wiped, you're able to still just churn through your deck and, keep putting out these big bombs like Royal Elemental that Archelli is going after. Also, this is a huge board.
Yeah, the board states kind of get out of hand here, especially Archjellies. Like, it's hard to tell what's what and where, like, what can attack this turn, which is an enchantment. It's, if I were resting right now, especially like Dr. Vuski, it's looking really, really, really rough. I mean, Aesi's a 6/6. Royal Elemental's a 7/7 that's going to be stealing creatures on landfall triggers. So that's going to be an issue that you're going to have to worry about, like your dragons getting stolen, or like Vuski no longer can cast his commander without it getting brought over to Archjelly's side. So, like, it's looking like a concede, or just, like, a very, very, very bleak outcome here. So, but it's important to, like I was saying earlier, just stay in the game. Just try and, like, interact, because, like, no matter what, it's learning for future games. You're learning when to interact, how to interact, what to expect from other players. And so, like, giving up early, or even giving up when your opponent seems to have the upper hand, just never. I think it's better to just try and stay in it,
I think that's a good approach. A lot of the time, you can also just account for, this is a huge board, and human error also goes into a factor, and this is where you really have to know the triggers and you have to know the interaction. Because if you miss some, down the line, you're like, oh my god, I missed my triggers, I ran out of gas, something like that. So it definitely does not hurt you to stay in the game. But I think as resting the second, the player with the second best board at the moment, and at one point in time had the most threatening board, what course of action do you think he should take? Like, what are your main targets if you can, spot them out on Archjelly's board? What are you mainly looking to take out?
I'm looking at that Royal Elemental. I'm looking at the Aesi that's giving him card draw. I'm looking at the Molimol. That's just a huge creature by now. I don't even know how many lands he has. Just any piece of his value engine that you can take it out. But he just has so much redundancy. Like, I believe he can play up to 3 lands each turn now, because he has Exploration and AEC plus his 1 land per turn. There's another one. So now he can play up to 4 lands per turn. And if you're just looking at the other effects, he's drawing at least 3 to 4 cards per land drop.
And I
because
believe
of the different effects across the board.
well, I mean, he's not a he's one of the other decks that's not a vast historical deck, so I assume he's scared of actually decking himself out. So he's probably just trying to figure out where he's going with this. Right now, I believe Royal Elemental takes cards, right? But he passes the turn. Wow, resting, and everyone really just gets to, you know, breathe a sigh of relief. I believe that that trample and a lot of those other creatures probably could have taken out Dr. Vuski, but he didn't want to leave himself open.
So the Royal Elemental is not really going to be able to do anything to resting because of the Steel Resolve. It's an enchantment that we forgot to mention earlier, but the Steel Resolve is not letting anybody target any of Ryan's creatures. So
Ryan's Mocha is on the board, so he's free to go. He basically has a hexproof and a Teferi effect almost.
Right, so it's just getting creatures out at this point, which he has his draw engine, he has his protection, and he has his creatures that are just giant. Dragons are never small creatures.
That's true, but he doesn't. I don't think he's living another, because his Archeli's creatures do have summoning sickness, and resting really has to. He actually makes the decision to kill Dr. Vuski and get him out of the game. And right now, you're really just looking at he's able to gain some life through Dragonlord or Mocha, but you really have to look at how am I going to kill everyone here, and he's able to kill them through, you know, having the right interaction in his hand. That was one of the do or die ones where if you don't win here, I'm going to swing at you on my next turn to win.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, this game it's entertaining to watch. I am one of the people that really enjoys watching, you know, lower powered decks just really do their thing, because it's fun to see the engines and the creativity, and it's fun to see cards from, you know, areas and periods of Magic that we just don't see often. And so, like, I definitely don't think these are low powered decks, but I think not being CDH allows them to play more pet cards and more fun cards. What did you think about how did your deck do? What do you think about the game? What do you think about the decks that they brought with them? What's your opinion?
I think within this deck, or this pod, my deck really got a showcase. You know, I think it showcased a lot of what it did. They just had really good interaction. I'd say one of the main turning points was the Ugin hitting the board and exile and everything. All my rogues that I had, or the value engine that I was trying to crew up, because not only did that take out my Thasses, that took out my plan B as well, and I was basically just trying to survive. So that's that's Mystery Commander Theater 100. Congratulations to resting. The Dragon deck performed very well. I think every deck really performed well. I think every deck kind of got to do what it was going to do, outside of possibly Boo. But
absolutely, yep.
He got kind of bullish by me.
Yeah, that Graph Digger's Cage did a lot. Well, it was a pleasure having you, and we will see you next month for our next episode.
Awesome. Thanks. Take care.
Yep, you too.